The night was calm, and the sky above the small town was full of stars. A young man named Daniel sat on the old wooden bench near the edge of the forest. He often came here when his mind was restless. Life was not bad for him, but it was not exciting either. He had a simple job, a small apartment, and only a few friends. Most evenings, he returned home tired and bored. Sometimes he wished for something different, something that would break the quiet routine of his life. That night, under the bright moonlight, he felt the same. Daniel leaned back and stared at the sky. The stars seemed endless, almost like eyes watching him. He laughed quietly at his own thoughts and whispered to the empty air, "If the universe is listening, then send me a bride. Someone strong, someone unusual. I promise I'll take care of her." His voice was playful, like a child making a silly wish. He knew nobody was there to hear it, but the forest was strangely silent. The crickets that usually sang in the night had stopped. A soft wind blew through the trees, making the branches creak as if something had woken up. Daniel felt a chill on his arms, though the air was not cold. He laughed again, trying to shake off the strange feeling. "See? Nothing happens," he told himself. "It's just me talking nonsense." Still, his words seemed to echo longer than they should have. The sound bounced back from the trees, almost like a whisper answering him. He stood up and looked around. The shadows between the trunks seemed deeper. The moonlight looked pale and sharp, almost silver. For the first time, Daniel felt that maybe his little joke had gone too far. He walked back toward the road, but then he froze. In the sky above the forest, he saw a small light. At first, he thought it was just a star, but it moved. Slowly, it grew brighter, like a lantern falling from the heavens. Daniel rubbed his eyes. He had never seen anything like it before. The light grew until it looked like fire hidden inside a glass sphere. It lowered itself, disappearing behind the trees. His heart began to pound. Curiosity pulled him back toward the forest. He told himself it was just a meteor, nothing more. But his steps carried him deeper into the dark woods. The silence around him grew heavier. Every sound of his shoes crunching on the leaves seemed too loud. Then he saw it. A clearing opened before him, and in the center stood something he could not explain. A circle of faint glowing lines burned into the ground like symbols from an ancient language. Inside the circle stood a shape, tall, thin, and motionless. At first, Daniel thought it was a statue. But then it moved. The figure stepped forward. It wore dark armor that glistened like black glass under the moon. The helmet slid back, revealing pale skin that seemed to shine with its own light. Long silver hair spilled over her shoulders. Her eyes glowed faint red, and sharp fangs caught the moonlight when she spoke. "You called," she said in a calm, deep voice. "I have answered." Daniel felt his knees weaken. He wanted to laugh, to say this was some kind of prank. But his throat was dry, and no sound came out. His mind screamed at him to run, but his body would not move. The woman walked closer, her steps smooth and silent. Every motion carried strength, but also grace, like a predator that had chosen its prey. He finally managed to stammer, I was only joking. "I didn't mean it." The woman tilted her head, her eyes narrowing. "Words are binding," she replied. "A vow spoken under the stars cannot be taken back. You asked for a bride. I am here." Daniel shook his head in disbelief. This had to be a dream. He had only been bored, only playing with his imagination. But the ground still glowed with strange marks, and the air was heavy with her presence. He could even smell her faintly, a cold, metallic scent. "Like iron and roses. I don't even know who you are," he whispered. Her lips curved into a smile. But it was not a human smile. It was sharp, dangerous. "I am a Warbride," she said, "chosen by blood, bound by ancient law. And now, I am yours. Daniel felt the night close in around him. His playful question had become something else, something far bigger than he could understand. The stars above no longer seemed friendly. They looked like silent witnesses to a contract he had never meant to make. The woman raised her hand, and for a moment he thought she would strike him. Instead, she touched his arm lightly. A burning sensation spread across his skin. When he looked down, a faint red mark glowed on his wrist, like a symbol branded into his flesh. His breath came fast, and fear tightened his chest. "What is happening to me?" he cried. Her voice was steady and final. "The bond begins. From this moment, you are mine." And with those words, the forest went dark, as if the night itself bowed to her claim. Daniel stood frozen in the clearing. The mark on his wrist still glowed faint red, and the pale woman with silver hair watched him like a shadow come alive. The night pressed in from all sides. Even the moon seemed weaker now, as if her presence swallowed the light. He tried to breathe slowly, but his chest was tight. Everything inside him screamed, "This is not real." Yet every detail proved it was. He could hear her faint breathing, steady and calm. He could feel the heat of her touch still burning on his skin. He could even see the ground at her feet, where strange symbols glimmered like embers fading after a fire. "Who are you?" Daniel whispered again, his voice breaking. The woman tilted her head slightly, as though she found the question amusing. "I told you," she said. "I am a Warbride. I have crossed the dark to answer your call." Her words carried weight, like each sound was carved from stone. Daniel swallowed hard. He wanted to shout at her, to demand she leave him alone, but fear held his tongue. She stepped closer, and every step seemed to smooth, to silent. It was like she glided across the ground, untouched by the leaves and roots. "Listen," Daniel said quickly, raising his hands as if to defend himself. "It was only a joke. I didn't mean it. I don't need a bride. Especially not." He stopped himself before saying the word monster. Her eyes narrowed, catching the faintest glow of the moon. "You spoke. You asked, and the vow was sealed. That cannot be undone." Her voice was calm, yet beneath it was a sharpness, like a blade hidden in silk. Daniel stepped back, but the clearing seemed smaller now, like the trees had closed in to trap him. His foot hit a root, and he almost stumbled. He wanted to run, but something inside him whispered that there was no escape. This woman was not human. She could catch him no matter where he went. "You are afraid," she said softly. For a moment, there was no cruelty in her tone, only certainty. "Do not fear me. Fear those who will come. You have bound yourself to me, and that bond will shine like a beacon. The hunters will see it. They will come for you. Only I can keep you alive." Daniel's heart thumped so hard he thought it would burst. "Hunters? What hunters?" She did not answer immediately. Instead, she raised her hand. The air around her shimmered like heat rising from fire. Slowly, her armored gauntlet melted away, fading into mist, until her pale hand was bare. She reached forward and pressed her fingertips lightly against his wrist, where the mark burned. Instantly, visions filled his head. He saw flashes of space-vast black skies, glowing warships shaped like blades, and endless battles fought in fire and blood. He saw creatures with wings of bone and claws like knives. He saw entire planets burn to ash. And through it all, he saw her people-pale warriors with glowing eyes and fangs, their armor dripping with shadow. The images vanished, and Daniel stumbled backward, gasping for air. "What? What was that?" he choked. "The truth," she replied. "Your world is not alone. There are empires beyond the stars. Some fear the humans. Some laugh at you. But all know the oath. When a human calls, we Warbrides answer. And when the bond is formed, it cannot be broken. Daniel shook his head wildly. No, I don't want this. I didn't ask for war or hunters or any of this. I was just making fun. Her red eyes locked onto his. For the first time, Daniel saw something behind the sharpness. Not anger, not cruelty, but something heavier. A weight of years, of memories. Do you think I wished for this? She asked quietly. We are not given choices. We are bound to answer. And now, so are you. The word struck him deeper than he expected. For a moment, he saw her not as a monster, but as someone trapped, just like him. A prisoner of an old promise. But before he could speak, the ground shook. A deep rumble echoed through the forest, as though something enormous moved beneath the earth. Daniel spun around, his eyes wide. The woman turned her head slowly toward the dark trees. They are here, she said. Her voice carried no surprise, only certainty. The hunters have smelled the bond. Daniel's stomach turned to ice. Here, already. The Warbride's lips curved in a smile sharp, dangerous, but not for him. Yes, you will see now why you cannot run from me. From the shadows between the trees, shapes began to appear. Low, crouching figures with glowing green eyes. Their skin looked rough, cracked like stone, and their hands ended in long claws. The air filled with a foul stench, like smoke and rotting meat. Daniel's legs trembled. He wanted to scream, but his throat was locked. The Warbride stepped in front of him, her armor flowing back into place like liquid shadow. Her silver hair glowed faintly in the darkness, and her red eyes burned like fire. Stay behind me, she said. Your first lesson begins tonight. The hunters hissed, their voices a chorus of hunger. Daniel's knees nearly buckled, but he clung to her words like a rope. And then, as the first creature leaped from the trees, the Warbride moved. Her hands sliced through the air, and the shadows themselves bent into a blade. With one strike, the hunter fell in two. Dark ash scattered in the wind. Daniel's heart raced, terror mixing with awe. For the first time, he understood this was no dream. The joke he made under the stars had opened a door he could never close, and standing beside him was the only one who could protect him, or destroy him. The forest was filled with smoke and silence. Ash from the fallen hunters drifted in the cold night air, swirling around Daniel like black snow. His chest heaved and his legs shook as though he had run for miles, though he had barely moved. In front of him stood the pale woman, the Warbride, her shadow blade still dripping with dark ash. She was calm, her breathing steady. As if the fight had been nothing more than a small exercise, Daniel could hardly believe what he had just seen. He had watched her cut down monsters as if they were made of paper. No fear in her eyes. No hesitation. Just power. Terrifying, absolute power. And yet she had stood between him and death, guarding him like a shield. She turned slowly, her red eyes glowing faintly as they met his. For a moment, Daniel wanted to step back, but the weight of her gaze held him in place. She lowered her blade, and it dissolved into mist that sank into the earth. It has begun, she said quietly. Daniel's throat was dry. What? What has begun? The bond, she answered. The hunters will not stop. They will smell it, chase it, until either you are dead, or you are fully mine. Her words cut through him like ice. He looked down at his wrist. The mark glowed faintly, pulsing in rhythm with his heartbeat. It didn't feel like a wound. It felt alive, as if something beneath his skin was moving, waiting. He rubbed at it desperately, but the mark did not fade. This is crazy, Daniel muttered, shaking his head. I didn't agree to this. I never wanted this. I don't even know you. The Warbride's face remained still, but there was a flicker in her eyes, something sharp that softened for only a moment. Names mean little, she said. "But if it eases your fear, you may call me Celine." Daniel repeated it under his breath. Celine. It felt strange, heavy, like a word older than language itself. He almost regretted saying it out loud. She stepped closer. He could feel the cold air around her body, colder than the night itself. When she lifted her hand toward his face, he flinched back, but she did not stop. She touched his cheek lightly, her skin cool against his warmth. "You are human," Celine said softly. "Fragile, weak, and yet there is something in you, a spark. That is why the bond chose you." Daniel let out a shaky laugh. "A spark. I was bored. That's all. Just a stupid joke." Her eyes narrowed. The universe does not waste power on jokes. Before he could reply, she pressed her thumb against the mark on his wrist. Pain shot through his arm, hot and sharp, and Daniel cried out. The mark blazed brighter, spreading tendrils of light under his skin. His knees buckled, and he fell, clutching his arm. "What are you doing to me?" He gasped. "Sealing what has already begun," Celine said. Her voice was calm, but her hand trembled slightly. "If you resist, you will break. If you accept, you will endure." The pain grew until Daniel thought he would pass out. His vision blurred, and in that blur, he saw visions like before. But this time they were not of war in the stars. They were of himself. He saw his own face, but not as it was now. He saw himself taller, stronger, his eyes glowing faint red, his hands carrying a shadow blade like hers. The images vanished, and Daniel collapsed onto the ground, panting. His body trembled with exhaustion. Slowly, he lifted his head and stared at her. You're changing me," he whispered. Celine's expression was unreadable. "The bond changes both of us. You share my strength. I share your heart." He blinked, confused. "My heart." Her lips curved into the faintest smile, but it was not kind. "Do not mistake it for love. The bond is older than love. It is survival. Your life is now tied to mine. If you die, I fall. If I fall, you die. There is no turning back." Daniel's stomach twisted. The weight of her words pressed on him like a chain he could not break. He tried to imagine running, leaving her behind, pretending none of this had happened. But the mark burned at the thought, and his chest tightened painfully, as though the bond itself warned him against it. "You think I'm strong," he said bitterly. "I'm not. I can't fight monsters. I can't fight wars. I'm just me." Celine crouched down, her silver hair brushing her pale armor. Her eyes locked on his, fierce and steady. "You will learn," she said, "and you will fight. Not because you are strong now, but because the bond will demand it. Your fear will become your weapon. Your weakness will become your edge, and I will make sure you do not fall." Daniel stared back at her, searching for any sign of mercy, of choice. But her face was as cold as stone, carved by centuries of battles he could not imagine. For a long moment, silence filled the clearing. Only the faint crackle of the burned ground and Daniel's heavy breathing broke it. Finally, Celine stood again, turning her gaze to the trees. "They will return soon," she said, "stronger than before. And when they do, you must be ready." Daniel pushed himself up slowly, still trembling. He wanted to scream at her, to tell her he was not ready, that he would never be ready. But the mark on his wrist pulsed again, and deep inside, a small voice whispered that his life was no longer his own. Celine glanced back at him, her eyes burning like fire in the night. "The bond is sealed," she said, "and your fate has already changed." And with those words, Daniel realized the truth. The joke he had spoken under the stars had not just brought her here. It had bound them together forever. The night no longer felt like the night Daniel once knew. The forest was not simply trees and shadows any. It was a battlefield waiting to open. He walked behind Celine, still weak from the burning bond that had carved itself into his wrist. Every step felt heavy, as though the ground resisted him. But Celine moved with ease, her pale armor glimmering faintly under the moonlight, her long silver hair swaying behind her like a banner. He hated how calm she looked. How could she act as if this was normal? He wanted to shout at her, to demand answers, but fear closed his throat. Fear of her. Fear of the mark. Fear of whatever was stalking them now. They reached the edge of the clearing. Celine raised her hand, and Daniel froze. Her red eyes scanned the darkness, sharp and unblinking. The air smelled strange burnt metal mixed with rotten earth. Daniel's stomach twisted. "They are near," Celine whispered. Her voice carried no fear, only certainty. Daniel squinted into the trees. At first, he saw nothing. Then, slowly, faint green glows appeared in the distance, like eyes hidden among the branches. The glow multiplied 2, then 4, then 10. Dozens of eyes stared back at him, unblinking. His breath caught in his chest. Shapes crawled out of the shadows. They were not like the hunters from before. These were larger, faster. Their bodies covered in hard black armor that glistened like oil. Their arms were long, ending in claws sharp enough to slice bark from the trees. Their jaws opened wide, lined with jagged teeth that dripped thick green saliva. Daniel staggered back. His legs wanted to run, but his body froze where it stood. What? What are those things? Celine's voice was like steel. Scavenger pack, trained to smell blood and bonds. They will not leave until you are torn apart. Daniel's throat closed. He shook his head wildly. Then fight them. Kill them all like you killed the others. Celine's eyes flicked toward him, sharp as blades. You do not command me. You survive because I allow it. But you must learn. If you stay weak, you will not last the next night. Before Daniel could argue, the hunters struck. The first one leaped forward, its claws flashing in the moonlight. Daniel ducked instinctively, but Celine was faster. Her hands swept through the air, and a blade of shadow formed instantly. She sliced through the creature mid-leap. Its body exploded into dark ash before it even touched the ground, but the others did not hesitate. They swarmed from the trees, hissing and screeching like broken metal. Celine moved like a storm, her sword shifting shapes, cutting, piercing, dissolving into mist and reforming in her grip. Every strike left hunters falling in black clouds. Daniel stood, frozen, torn between awe and terror. He had never seen anyone fight like this. She was unstoppable, untouchable, a blur of shadow and silver hair. But even as she cut them down, more poured from the woods. Run, Celine commanded without looking back. Daniel's legs finally obeyed. He stumbled through the undergrowth, his lungs burning as he sprinted. Branches whipped his face, roots grabbed his feet, but he forced himself forward. Behind him, the forest shook with screams and the clash of steel. But no matter how far he ran, the glow of green eyes appeared again. Hunters burst from the trees in front of him, cutting off his escape. Daniel's heart sank. His body froze, trembling. He had nowhere to go. One of the creatures hissed, its jaws wide, saliva dripping to the ground. It lunged. Daniel threw his arms up, waiting for claws to tear him apart, and suddenly his wrist burned. The mark flared with red light, brighter than ever before. Heat surged through his body. His vision sharpened. For a heartbeat, time slowed. He saw the hunters leap in slow motion, every movement clear, without thinking. Daniel grabbed a broken branch at his feet and swung. The wood glowed with the same red light as his mark. The branch pierced straight through the hunter's chest. The creature screamed, dissolving into ash. Daniel stared at his hands in shock. I killed it. From behind, Celine's voice cut through the chaos. The bond gives you strength. Use it. More hunters circled him. Daniel gripped the branch tighter, his heart racing. His fear did not vanish, but it changed. It burned hotter, sharper, turning into something else. He struck again, and another hunter fell. Celine fought her way to his side, her blade flashing. Together, they held the line, she with the grace of centuries. He with the desperate strength of someone fighting for the first time. The ground filled with ash, and the air with the screams of dying beasts. At last, silence returned. The final hunter fell, scattering into dust. Daniel collapsed to his knees, gasping for breath. His hands shook violently, the branch still glowing faintly before it crumbled into ash. Celine stood above him, calm as ever, her armor stained with black dust. She looked down at him, her red eyes burning with something sharp, pride, or maybe hunger. "You see now," she said. "The bond is no dream. It will change you whether you accept it or not." Daniel's chest heaved. He wanted to deny it, to scream at her, to demand his old life back, but he couldn't. He had felt it. For the first time, he had struck with power not his own, and deep inside, a terrifying thought whispered to him. Part of him had liked it. The forest was silent again, but Daniel's heart was still pounding as if the battle had never ended. He sat against a tree trunk, his chest rising and falling in heavy breaths. His hands shook so badly that he pressed them against the dirt just to keep them still. The glow on his wrist had faded, but the memory of its fire still burned inside him. Celine stood a few steps away, wiping black ash from her blade. Her pale face looked calm, almost untouched, though her armor was scarred with claw marks. She moved with slow grace, like a predator who had finished the hunt. When her red eyes turned to him, Daniel felt the same mix of fear and awe that had haunted him since the night began. He wanted to speak, but his throat was dry. He wanted to deny what had happened, but the truth was carved into his skin and his memory. He had killed one of those creatures. He had felt the bond pour strength into him, burning through his veins, changing him. It was not a dream. It was not a story. It was real. Celine walked closer. Her boots made no sound on the dirt, yet every step felt heavy to Daniel's ears. She crouched in front of him, her glowing eyes steady and sharp. "You fought," she said simply. Daniel shook his head quickly. "No, I just. It was the bond. It wasn't me." Her lips curved into the faintest smile, but there was no warmth in it. "The bond gives power, yes, but it does not move your hand. That was you. You chose to strike." Daniel pressed his palms to his face. "I didn't have a choice. It was either fight or die." Celine's voice was calm, almost cold. "And that is the truth of your life now. Every day, every moment you will fight or you will die." Daniel dropped his hands, anger flashing in his eyes. "I didn't ask for this. I didn't want this bond. I was joking, Celine. Joking. Why can't you understand that?" For a long moment, Celine was silent. Her expression did not change, but her eyes softened just slightly. When she spoke, her voice carried a weight Daniel had not heard before. "Do you think I wanted this?" Daniel blinked, caught off guard. She looked past him into the dark trees. "We Warbrides are not free. We are bound to an ancient vow, older than empires. When a human calls, we must answer. No matter where we are, no matter what we want. I was taken from the edge of battle to stand before you. I did not choose. I obeyed." Her words fell heavy between them. For the first time, Daniel saw her not only as a warrior, but as someone trapped by something greater than herself. She was as much a prisoner as he was. "Then, you hate me for this?" Daniel whispered. Her eyes returned to him, sharp once more. No, hate is useless. What matters is survival. And survival means you must decide. Decide what? Celine leaned closer, her face inches from his. Her voice dropped lower, colder. Accept me. Accept the bond fully. Take the strength, the vision, the blood, or reject it. If you reject me, the mark will burn through you until you collapse, and then you will die. Daniel's blood ran cold. His mouth opened, but no words came. He had known, deep down, that there would be no easy escape. But hearing it spoken aloud shattered the last of his denial. He stood unsteadily, forcing himself to his feet. His body still trembled from exhaustion, but he faced her anyway. So, that's it. Either I become like you, or I die. Celine rose as well, tall and unbending. That is it. The silence stretched. Daniel's mind raced with every memory of his old life, his small apartment, his boring job, his quiet evenings. He thought of the things he would never do again if he chose death. But he also thought of what he would lose if he accepted his humanity, his normal life, the chance to ever feel safe again. He looked down at his wrist. The mark glowed faintly, like a heartbeat under his skin. It pulsed in rhythm with his fear. I don't want to die, he said finally, his voice breaking. Celine nodded once. Then you know your choice. But before he could answer, the ground shook. A deep rumble spread through the forest, rattling the trees. Daniel staggered, grabbing a branch to steady himself. Selena's eyes narrowed, her body instantly tense. What now? Daniel cried. Celine turned her head slowly toward the sky. Above the treetops, a faint red glow began to spread, like fire hidden behind clouds. The rumble grew louder, deeper, as though the earth itself groaned under the weight of something vast. Her voice was steady, but Daniel could hear the steel in it. The bond has been seen. The hunters were only the beginning. Now their masters come. Daniel's stomach turned to stone. Master Celine's eyes flashed red in the dark. The war has found you. Daniel's breath caught in his chest. He had not even spoken his answer, but already the universe was demanding it. Whether he accepted or not, the choice had to be made soon. And as the sky burned red, he realized there was no turning back. Asterisk. The red glow in the sky grew brighter until it looked like the heavens themselves were on fire. Daniel shielded his eyes with his arm, but the light bled through the trees, staining the forest in shades of blood. The ground shook again, harder this time, making branches snap and dirt slide beneath his feet. Celine stood tall, her silver hair glowing faintly against the crimson light. She did not flinch, did not move. Her red eyes stayed fixed on the burning sky. Daniel wanted to scream, to demand answers, but his throat tightened. Fear had become his constant companion. Then the clouds split open. From the crack in the heavens, ships poured through massive, jagged war machines shaped like black wings. Their engines roared like storms. Their lights pulsed like hungry eyes. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds, filled the night. They did not belong to Earth. They did not belong to anything Daniel had ever imagined. His knees weakened. They're here for us. Selena's gaze did not waver. They are here for you. Daniel felt his stomach drop. Me? Why me? I'm nothing. You are not nothing, Celine said sharply. You are bonded. That makes you dangerous. That makes you a prize. The ships hovered, casting shadows that swallowed the forest whole. Then the first wave descended. Sleek black pods detached from the bellies of the ships, screaming through the air like falling stars. They slammed into the ground around the forest, splitting open. From inside crawled soldiers tall, armored creatures with weapons that glowed faint green. Their movements were sharp, disciplined. Unlike the hunters, these were soldiers of war. Daniel's heart pounded so hard he thought it would break his ribs. He backed against a tree, his breath shallow and fast. "There's no way we can fight them. There's too many." Selena's voice was calm, but her words cut like steel. "Then you must choose." Now, her eyes burned into his. "The bond is half formed. You have tasted its power, but only a drop. If you accept me fully, the bond will give you more. Enough to survive, enough to fight beside me. But if you refuse, then you will fall here, and I will fall with you." Daniel's chest tightened. He thought of his old life again, his boring job, his small apartment, his quiet nights alone. That world already felt like a memory, as distant as childhood. He thought of the mark on his wrist, of the fire he had felt when he struck down the hunter. He thought of Selene, standing in front of him again and again, never letting the monsters reach him. He closed his eyes, forcing breath into his lungs. "I don't want to die," he whispered. Selene stepped closer, so close he could feel the cold of her body against his. "Then accept me." Daniel opened his eyes. Fear burned in them, but so did something else, something sharper. He raised his wrist, the mark glowing faintly, and held it toward her. "Do it," he said. His voice shook, but the words were steady. For the first time, Selene's lips curved into something like approval. She lifted her hand and pressed her pale fingers to the mark. The world erupted in fire. Pain unlike anything Daniel had ever known seared through his veins, as though his blood itself had caught flame. He screamed, dropping to his knees, but Selene did not move her hand. The mark on his wrist blazed brighter, spreading up his arm, across his chest, into his heart. His vision blurred, filled with sparks of red light. Through the agony, he saw flashes himself standing in armor, his eyes glowing, his hands wielding a blade of shadow and fire. He saw Selene at his side, her power flowing into him, his power flowing into her. Together, they were one weapon, one soul, one force. Then the visions faded, and the pain softened into strength. Daniel gasped, clutching the dirt beneath him. When he looked at his hands, they glowed faint red, the same fire as Selene's eyes. The branch he grabbed earlier reformed in his grip, not wood, but a blade of solid shadow, pulsing with his heartbeat. He stood slowly. His legs no longer trembled. His breath no longer shook. Power hummed under his skin like a storm waiting to break. Selene stepped back, her expression unreadable. "Now," she said, "you are bound. Body, blood, and soul." The soldiers advanced, their glowing weapons raised. Daniel gripped his shadow blade tighter. For the first time, he did not want to run. Fear was still in him, but it burned hot, sharp, alive. Selene drew her own blade, its edge gleaming like black fire. She glanced at him once, and her voice was steady. "Fight with me," the first soldier charged. Daniel moved without thinking. His blade swung faster and stronger than any movement he had ever made. The soldier fell, its armor cracking into ash. The others roared, rushing in. Selene met them head-on, a blur of silver hair and shadow steel. Daniel fought beside her, each strike guided by the bond, each movement fueled by the fire in his blood. Together, they cut through the soldiers, their blades leaving trails of red light in the dark. But the battle was not easy. For every soldier they struck down, more poured from the pods. The forest shook with their march, the air filled with screams and smoke. Daniel's arms ached, his breath grew heavy. But the bond carried him forward, at last. When the ground was covered in ash and broken armor, a new sound filled the night. A low, rumbling laugh echoed across the forest. From the largest ship above, a figure descended, taller than any soldier, clad in dark crimson armor that shimmered like blood. His eyes glowed brighter than Selena's, and his presence pressed against Daniel's chest like a mountain. Selena's face hardened. The warlord, Daniel, gripped his blade tighter. His body trembled again, but this time not from weakness. From the knowledge that the real fight was only beginning. The forest lay in ruins. Trees were broken, the ground was scorched, and ash floated in the air like dark snow. Daniel's chest rose and fell in heavy breaths, his new shadow blade flickering faint red in his grip. Beside him, Selene stood calm, her eyes fixed on the figure that had descended from the great ship above. The warlord. He was massive, taller than any soldier they had fought. His armor shone dark crimson, etched with runes that pulsed like open wounds. His steps shook the ground, and every movement radiated power. His glowing eyes locked on Daniel first, then on Selene. A cruel smile curved his sharp lips. "So it is true," the warlord said, his voice deep as thunder. "A warbride has answered a human." A joke of fate. Daniel's grip on his blade tightened. His body trembled not from weakness, but from the weight of the warlord's presence. Every instinct told him to run, yet the bond held him steady. Selene's calm, unshaken stance beside him gave him strength he could not explain. "You cannot touch him," Selene said, her voice firm. "He is mine." The warlord's laugh rolled through the forest, cruel and mocking. "Yours? No, Selene. He is prey. You are chained to him, and that makes you weak." Selene raised her blade, shadows curling around her armor. "Then test me." The warlord moved with terrifying speed for his size. In an instant, his blade, a weapon made of pure crimson lights, lammed against Selena's shadow sword. The impact cracked the ground, sending shockwaves through the forest. Daniel stumbled back, shielding his face from the blast of energy. The duel began. Selene fought with elegance and fury, her strikes sharp and unyielding. But the warlord was stronger. Every blow from his blade shook the air. Every step carried the weight of a mountain. Sparks of red and black fire lit the night as their weapons clashed again and again. Daniel watched, his heart pounding. He could feel the bond pulling at him, urging him forward. He wasn't just a spectator, he was part of this fight. His chest burned, his wrist glowed, and the blade in his hand pulsed like a living thing. "Move!" Selene shouted as the warlord's strike forced her to one knee. Daniel leaped forward before he even realized it. His blade cut through the air, striking the warlord's side. The crimson armor cracked, and the giant staggered. For a moment, Daniel felt a surge of triumph. He had hurt him, but the warlord turned, his glowing eyes narrowing. With one swing, his blade sent Daniel flying back into the dirt. Pain shot through his body, and his lungs screamed for air. Selena's voice cut through the haze. "Stand, Daniel. The bond will not let you fall, unless you let it." He forced himself up, spitting blood. The fire in his veins blazed hotter. His fear twisted into fury. He charged again, his blade shining brighter than before. This time, he did not fight alone. Selene moved beside him, their blades striking in unison. Her strength flowed into him, and his fire fueled her strikes. Together, it became something more. The warlord roared as their combined assault pushed him back. Daniel felt his blade grow longer, sharper, as if it responded to his will. Selena's shadows wrapped around him like armor, protecting his body from strikes that would have shattered bone. Their movements aligned, two bodies but one rhythm. The battle raged across the clearing, tearing apart what little remained of the forest. The warlord fought with savage power, but the bond made Daniel and Selene unstoppable. Each time one of them faltered, the other carried the fight forward. Each strike they made together landed deeper, heavier, until cracks spread wider across the warlord's crimson armor. At last, Selene whispered a single word. "Now, Daniel understood without needing more. He leaped forward, his blade glowing brighter than ever. Selena's sword locked with the warlord's, forcing it upward, leaving his chest open. Daniel drove his blade straight into the glowing core beneath the cracked armor. The warlord screamed, his body bursting with red light. His massive frame shook violently before shattering into ash that scattered into the burning night sky. Silence followed. Daniel collapsed to his knees, his blade fading into smoke. His body shook with exhaustion, but he was alive. Selene stood above him, her sword dissolving into shadow. Her pale face showed no smile, but her red eyes glowed with something he could almost recognize: respect. "It is done," she said. Softly, Daniel looked at the ruined forest, at the ash drifting like snow. His voice was hoarse. "What happens now?" Selene crouched beside him, her hand resting lightly on his wrist where the mark still glowed. "Now the galaxy knows a human has claimed a Warbride. They will fear you. They will hunt you. And they will never stop." Daniel let out a shaky laugh. "Great. So I've gone from boring nights to endless war." Selene tilted her head, her silver hair falling across her armor. "You asked for a bride. You received one." Destiny does not care for jokes. He met her gaze, and despite everything, the fear, the pain, the blood, he felt something stir inside him. Not love, not yet, but a vow. A vow to stand, to fight, to live. He pushed himself to his feet. His body ached, but the bond burned steady in his chest. He looked at Selene, at the pale warrior bound to him, and spoke quietly. "Then we fight together." Her eyes glowed brighter, and for the first time, her lips curved into something close to a real smile. "Yes," she said. Together, the ash swirled around them, the forest silent once more. Above, the great ships retreated, their masters gone. But the stars seemed different now, watching, waiting, as if the universe itself had taken note of the vow made in fire and blood. And in that silence, Daniel understood. His playful question had become destiny, and destiny had become war.